Welcome, welcome, and thank you so much. We are live for another Friday. It is the 14th day of June, and we are back here with another Lunch and Learn. And we are live on three medias. We're on Facebook, Instagram, I'm talking about Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and here on LinkedIn. Wow. And with me today, as usual, is my co host, Dr. Siegfried Howell. I'm having a little bit of challenge with my camera, but I know it's going to be fixed very soon. So we are going to be carrying on until my camera comes up. With me is my co host, Dr. Siegfried Howell, and Dr. Howell is a life happiness and relationship coach and consultant. He's also a master life coach, and he coaches and equips men and women uh, who struggle with internal, intimate, and professional relationships. He's also available for corporate leadership and management training and also personal development training. And as usual, I am yours truly, Dr. Janice Brooks, a leadership consultant, coach, and a trainer, part of the Maxwell team of certified leadership coaches, speakers, and trainers. I'm also a licensed pastoral counselor, and I am a temperament counselor. But today we are here to talk about exposing uh, power play and manipulation in leadership. The very word exposing means to open up and to bring to light. And that is what we're here to do today, to leadership, power play, and manipulation. Dr. Howell, thank you so much. Amidst the technical difficulties that we're having, thank you so much. And do you want to start by introducing what this manipulation and power play means to you, Dr. Howell?
Yes, manipulation is anything that someone does to get the upper hand or to get their way in a particular situation. Sometimes it can be subtle that the other person doesn't even know that's happening to them. And sometimes it can be blatant. But manipulation always means that someone has the upper end or the upper hand. And so we don't, as individuals, like the idea of being manipulated, but someone and everyone gets manipulated at some point in time in their life. Now, when people in our circle do it to us consistently, we call it toxicity. But even parents manipulate their kids into doing things that are good for them or better for them. So sometimes manipulation can be a good thing. And I say that begrudgingly, but but most of the times manipulation has a negative connotation that is attached to it.
You are, in fact, so correct, Dr. Howell, because there are two types of manipulation. There is actually the negative manipulation, and there is manipulation that can seem to be positive. And we're going to be talking about some of these different types today. Because when I say positive manipulation, we're talking about manipulation like flattery, where persons say good things as if they're saying good things about you, but they're actually trying to flatter you. And that's also a form of manipulation. And sometimes it can be defined as positive manipulation, whether we know it or not. But this thing that we're talking about today is breaking down in at least five different types of manipulation. And when I look at what we will be discussing, Dr. Howell, we'll be discussing the control of information, which is manipulation, overpromising, triangulation, and scapegoating. These are all manipulative tactics and strategies that leaders and even persons in life use on a daily basis to control others. So, Dr. Howell, how can the control of information within an organization by the leader be used as a form of manipulation? How do you think that can be done?
Okay, so if you look at countries like China and you look at countries like North Korea and other communistic type countries or similar countries, you will find that the citizens do not have access to a wide variety of internet. And so the information is controlled. And so they cannot see what the outside world thinks about what that particular leader is doing. But the subtle manipulation that I don't like is if you look at the America internet, if I'm a Democrat and I do a Google search, because of my affiliation, I only get Democratic type news. It is filtered to control what they think I want. But suppose you are a well-rounded person and you want to identify what the Republicans are concerned about, you don't necessarily get that information. And so it creates a polarized situation in this country where the Republicans are getting only the Republican stuff and the Democrats are only getting the Democratic stuff. And you really do not get the perspective from the other side. So that to me is subtle, but very, very extreme. And we saw a lot of that in the last political voting that we had in this country, where the country was totally polarized. But statistics show that the country, most people in this country are somewhere left or right of the median. But if you look at the different news media, you will think that we're all either extreme left or all extreme right. And there's no middle ground at all. What do you think about that?
Dr. Howell, you're touching some grounds that, you're touching some deep waters right there. But in fact, you are correct with what you're saying, because when a leader gets the ability to really manage the flow of information, where they can really selectively disclose or withhold certain information or certain details, in order to influence the views or the action of the public or of their team, if it is in the workplace, this can be really dangerous. Mm-hmm. And why do I say it can be dangerous? Because this control over the information can really create a situation where the leader holds an advantage, and you just mentioned it, as they possess other knowledge or they appear to hold knowledge to the advantage that others don't possess the knowledge that they really have. And this is what I would call strategic manipulation of information. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes the information can be so manipulated and it's so disguised that it can show up as like a needs to know basis. And I'm saying this because in many organizations, it's manipulating the information, but they make it sound like it's on a needs to know basis. So this set of persons know, but this set of person don't know, because it's not within the policy for you to know, when you're not even understanding or recognizing that they're actually manipulating the information to use it for you, for their own benefit. Because I do believe that people who manipulate are weak people. They have some form of insecurity. There is some underlying issues that cause them to use these tactics to manipulate others. So how, now that we have covered about the information aspect, do you want to say anything else about the information? Because I have another
Yes, question. I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
The first thing I want to say is this. Have you ever seen or heard people say that is above your pay grade?
Oh, yes.
That is the major form of information control, where people are letting you know you're not important enough to be privy to this information. And I think that that is a situation that leads to toxicity, that leads to people not trusting the leadership, because you're saying to me there's a lot of information that is going into your decision making, but I'm not privy to it. So I'm not sure that you really have my best interest at hand, because I don't have all the facts.
Absolutely.
And you might say to me, well, I'm doing this to not cause you to be fearful, or I'm doing this to take the load off of you. But how do I know that you're not self-serving and that you are doing stuff to help the greater good and not just line your pockets or help the people around you? So that's what I want to say about that. You know, when people say stuff like this is above your pay grade, or I was doing this to help you out, I didn't want to stress you out with all this stuff here. I just wanted to focus on what you had to do. That is a form of information control. And yes, it may be done with good and innocent intentions, but sometimes it's good to have that information so that you can ease your mind as to whether or not that person has your best interest at hand.
You're right, Dr. Howell. And as you mentioned that, before I go on to the next question, there is also a subtleness in that you just mentioned, because I hear you speak the word fear. That can also be emotional manipulation too. When they say, I didn't want to pressure you, it's over your pay grades. It's like emotional manipulation that comes in there when you are not able to see, but it is actually what is happening as well.
Mhm.
So my next question is, how can leaders use over promising, because that's also another form of manipulation, over promising. And I'm going to just say that this is over promising, Dr. Howell, can be a form of mind control. And this is where leaders can use any form of strategy that they think. They can come up with a form of strategy of over promising as a way to manipulate. They make these impressive commitments and promises, and most of the times it's not anything that they really can fulfill.
Mhm.
So they use this to create a sense of excitement and a sense of hope among, whether it's your followers or their team. So everybody is hyped up, and this is not something that has any long-term benefit or can carry into the long term. This is really a tactic that allow them to manipulate the emotions of those people that they lead or they're amongst. It's almost like controlling the way people think and act, because if they do this, then they can get persons on their side, and this is what we talk about over promising as a tactic. And they use these tactics also to earn trust and support. It's like they use it to allow themselves to become little gods
Yeah.
who cannot do anything wrong. And so it is important to note that while this overpromising may work for the short term, it cannot, in any seriousness, continue in the long term. Otherwise, it's going to have serious consequences. So what is your view on that, Dr. Howell?
Yes, when you overpromise and under deliver, that is not a good situation. My brother-in-law Calvin, he always talks to me about you under promise but over deliver. But when you over promise and under deliver, you know that leaves people with a sour taste in their mouth, because people are thinking, hey, there's a reward, there's some type of promotion, there's some type of benefit coming my way. So for example, if let's say a politician says, hey, I'm going to lower taxes, and they don't tell you how they're going to lower taxes, because if you lower taxes on one end, you have to raise it on some other end. Or if you take money from Peter, you got to give it back to Paul. There's no way that you can do one thing without it affecting something else. So a lot of times when politicians say, hey, you know what, if you sign on to this particular piece of legislation, then I can give you this. You have to look and see, is this something that they can guarantee that they can actually pull off? Because if you don't look at their track record, then you don't know whether or not it's pie in the sky. And so over promising to a person that is naive might seem, oh man, exciting and exhilarating, like you said. But if there's no way for them to follow through on it, then that creates a trend. It creates a precedence for people not to trust them anymore, because they cannot come through, and they did not come through with their promises. But it is a form of manipulation, because it gets people on board for the short term. If you vote for me, I'm going to make sure that everybody gets a 5% raise, or I'm going to make sure that the cost of living stays the way it is, and I'm going to increase minimum wage. Now, if you increase minimum wage, that means all the stores have to raise the prices of everything that's in the store. So, which means that everyone suffers in the end. So at the end of the day, you're promising something, but you cannot deliver on it. And so that is when over-promising can be very, very hurtful.
Absolutely. And sometimes, Dr. Howell, it can be both under promise too. But we're talking about over promising in this live today. But we have some other tactics and some other forms of power play and manipulation that are also very, very dangerous. And the other one we want to look at is the one that is called triangulation. And I like to just call it in common terms. In my country, we would simply say it's to divide and conquer.
Yes.
Yes, we don't usually use that big name. We just say you're here to divide and conquer, because we can recognize it when we see it, that it is one that seeks to cause division, and it's where, and this is the easiest way I can explain this, is when there is a select set of persons, and there are select set of tactics that are used. Usually the one that is most common is for you to speak behind the back of the person or share information that would benefit the person or this group of persons, but you withhold that because you do not want them to be privy. You don't want in other words, you're seeking to create a division between different sets of persons, or between yourself and a group over here with a different group over there, and all of this, the reason is really to divide and conquer. Mm-hmm. The root of it is insecurity, where you are seeking, that leader, that person is seeking to protect their position or their ego. So let me get my little clique over this side, and let me share this with them, and let me tell them this. But at the same time, I'm bad-mouthing that set over there without them even knowing. So you have a group sitting over here, and you have a group sitting over there. When a leader feels insecure, they will seek to use this like a shield over them, like a force or a shield over them, where they will seek the loyalty and security from a selected set of person or persons. And this is really, Dr. Howell, to shift blame or responsibility onto others and deflecting the attention from themselves. So when I do this, I am able to take the spotlight off myself or of this group here, and then I put it on that. So it's like sowing seeds of discord and distrust. It's like a competitive, a negative, demonic competitive force, which consolidates to bring forth like a kind of power and authority. And this is dangerous. It's toxic for life. It's toxic in the home. It's toxic in the workplace. It's toxic in every sense when a leader or a person seeks to divide and conquer. What is your view on this, Dr. Howell?
I want to bring in something that's a little different, but it still speaks to that. Just let's look at the legal system. You have, let's say, two people are going to court over some dispute. You have the plaintiff and you have the defendant, and the lawyer is supposed to be, sorry, not the lawyer, the judge is supposed to be impartial. So that's triangulation again, where you have three people involved in a situation. However, suppose one of those lawyers once a week goes golfing with the judge. That creates a situation where if the judge is not capable of disassociating themselves from their recreational time, where one particular lawyer can get certain accommodations because they have a relationship with that particular judge. And
Mm.
so it creates an impartial, I mean, it creates some level of partiality to one side over the other. And the other lawyer may not even know that that dynamic is going on. And
Mm.
so it can be as subtle as that, where both of them are in a certain club, whether it's secretive or known, and if you're not privy to that type of lifestyle, you may not even know that you as a lawyer or you as a you as a plaintiff or a defendant don't even have a shot because there's a relationship going on that you don't know of. And so when you have a leader saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to form a committee and I'm going to put these people on this committee, and a couple of those people are plants in that group that are for the leadership, and you don't even know that they have the leader's agenda in front of them, and they're pushing that agenda subtly, and you don't even know that that's going on. And you're thinking that, hey, this is a good committee. We're trying to get stuff done. We're getting innovative ideas, not knowing that plant is pushing ideas from the leadership, and you didn't even know that you're being manipulated. And
Wow.
so triangulation can be very, very subtle as well as very, very blatant. But a skillful manipulator can make it so subtle that you don't even know you're being manipulated.
Wow. And if you realize, Dr. Howard, what the discussion today, all of these forms of manipulation can be very subtle.
Yes.
If you, and that is why at the end, I believe that we should share a few strategies with persons as to how they can overcome or identify these these types of manipulation, because some of them are so subtle. Because while I explain it in one way, you were able to explain another aspect of it that is even more subtle than the divide and conquer aspect that I explained earlier. So if you don't understand how these things show up, then you are going to get caught in their grip, and not sure how to escape or get out of it. So I know we're going close to the end of time, but what are some situations where leaders could use scapegoating as a power play in their manipulation scheme? And this is a word that we use often in my country, and I think in the Caribbean we would say, "You think I'm a scapegoat?" So this is where persons are used. It's like, it's an act of blaming a person, or for something bad that happened that sometimes they are not even knowledgeable of. Am I correct? It's
Yes.
like simply
True.
passing on the blame to someone else, or passing what needs to go somewhere else to another person. And there are various situations that leaders can use, and persons can use, because I believe everything is about life and leadership, can use to exert this kind of power and this kind of strategy. Um, if I were to think about one or two, um, one would be more so to create like a sense of unity among their followers by directing their frustration and anger towards a common target. In other words, they say, this is what caused it, or he's the person who caused it, or she's the person, or it could be a thing. So they are directing the frustration onto something else. In another sense, it could be where they more or less try to strengthen their own position of authority. And because they're trying to do this, they are not able to find a solution then to the problem, but they need to be able to stand. They need to be able to be noticed. They need to be able to have this authority. So they diffuse and try to pass it on to someone else. I use a common one in the workplace where a target is not met, but the leader is the responsible person for leading the team to meet the target. But they want to still be able to maintain their authority, their level of credibility and whatever it is. So they pass this on. They use 2 or 3 persons as a scapegoat to pass that kind of frustration or anger or lack of being able to meet that goal to these persons, and use those persons as scapegoat. What are some other ways that you see this scapegoat thing showing up, Dr. Howell?
All right, so let's say you're on a committee, and let's say the leader says, hey, you know, we have a day to come up with a decision, and we have a day to solve this problem. I think time can be a form of manipulation also. When people say, hey, if we don't get this done by tomorrow at 5 o'clock, then heads are going to roll. So now that is a form of scapegoating. And not only that, if there are people who go against the majority because people are taking shortcuts because they're scared of not meeting the deadline, then when the deadline is not met, the person who had the most to say against the common decision becomes the scapegoat. So do you want to be the scapegoat, or so are you just going to go along with what needs to be done because you're scared of being the scapegoat? So that's one aspect of it. But here's another aspect of it that is subtle, but just as deadly: plausible deniability. When a leader says, hey, don't tell me what you're going to do, but this is the outcome that I want. And so you're putting pressure on someone to get something done within a certain amount of time. But I don't want to know how you do it, because the only way to do it in that time frame that I'm giving you means you have to cut some corners, means that you have to violate some boundaries, some policies, or even some values.
My God.
And so when you have plausible deniability, you're saying by any means necessary.
Possible. Wow.
And so, yes, you've passed the buck on to someone else. And that means anything that happens, you can say, hey, I didn't know he was doing it that way. I just gave him full autonomy to get the job done. I trusted him. But you knew full well that it could not be done without violating company policy.
Exactly.
So plausible deniability is the ultimate form of scapegoating, but it did not seem that way when a leader comes to you, because they can say to you, hey, I trust you to get this job done. You are my go-to guy. You are the one who comes through in the clutch. And so these are things that leaders can say to you to make you do things that violate your boundaries and violate your values and your guidelines in life. But then when it doesn't come into fruition, you're the one who loses the job. You're the one that gets demoted. You're the one that is scapegoated. And so you have to be very careful as to what leadership asks of you to make sure that it is something that you're capable of doing. Matter of fact, going back to the last one, to make sure you do not over promise and under deliver.
Wow. These are really serious points to consider, Dr. Howell, both in life and in leadership. And it's happening to many persons day by day. They go to work, they're manipulated, they're at home, they're manipulated. And what we talked about already is that manipulation is so subtle most of the times that if you are not able to recognize it, you will be seeing it as something else. And the last type of manipulation is the one that is called flattery. How can flattery really be used by a skilled manipulator as an effective tool? And when I think about flattery, that one is so common. And it shows up in many ways. Flattery can even show up like what we call a white lie. And it is a common type of manipulation. You know that what you're saying is not true. But and I have to look towards the Bible with this one, because the Apostle Paul said that in Romans. He said, I urge you, brothers and sisters, to watch out for those who cause division and put obstacles in your way that are contrary to the teaching that I gave you. And further down, he said, for such people are not serving Christ, but their own appetites. By their small talk and flattery, they deceive the minds of naive people.
Mm-hmm.
And that sums it so much. That sums it up so much, because these smooth talkers sometimes and manipulators use this kind of flattery as a powerful tool, where they more or less appeal to the ego and vanity of the person or persons or whoever their target is. And they give these compliments and this praise and create a sense of validation and importance to the person or the persons, making them feel as if they're in a special place, when it's really manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
It's untruth. It's a lie. It's not even just white lie. It's a lie, and it's a demonic force, I believe it is. And when they leverage this kind of manipulation, they can kind of establish a false sense of trust and more like camaraderie among their team and among the persons that they are with. And so they gain this kind of, I say, small God kind of image, where everyone looks to them because my leader is this or this person is this. But in essence, it's flattery that person is using to control the thoughts and the emotions of these persons that they are using it on their target, more like naive persons, weaker persons. What would you add to that, Dr. Howell?
I will say this. We've had leaders in this country, and I'm going way back to Daniel Boone and Custer and all those people. They say that Custer had no credibility when it came to leadership, but he was tall, he looked like a leader, and so they gave him the job of being a leader. A lot of times people get pushed into situations because they look a certain way, and we capitalize on that look or that charisma or that ego to get them to do things that is outside of their wheelhouse. Like you said, sometimes it is full-fledged lying, but sometimes you flatter someone in an area where they're strong to get them to do something in an area where they are average or weak. Wow. So you might be a good dresser, so why don't you go up front and report this for us? Or you might look like you are trustworthy, so let's get you to be the spokesperson for this particular thing. Or you big and you strong, you look intimidating, but you have a nice personality, but you look like you could be a good bouncer because you automatically give off that vibe. And so we can flatter people to do things that they're not comfortable with because they have that look or they have that charisma and they have that appearance that people might buy into, that they might buy into. And it is not always a bad thing, because when a wife or a husband says to their husband, hey, I have faith in you that you can do this because look what you did last week. And you flatter them and you butter them up and you give them a level of confidence that pushes them towards doing something that they're not comfortable with. So I would suggest to you that in all of these forms of manipulation, it depends on the intent. The person who is actually doing it. Do they have a relationship with you? Do they have your best interest at heart? Are they self-serving? What is their track record? So these are things that you look at to make sure that you're not going to be put in a situation that will come back to hurt you later on.
Wow. Indeed. Indeed. These persons, Dr. Howell, more or less, they wear masks. And because of the mask that they wear, if you're not able to see it, as you have just explained, they can do it so subtle in different ways, allowing it to look like a positive, but yet flattery in any form is a negative. At the end of the day, it is doing something that is not right, or saying something that is not right. It's flattery. And as we wrap up, Dr. Howell, we want to leave a few points of strategies. How can persons really um, move with a strategy in their back pocket, in their handbag, in their mind, to combat any form of manipulation? And I am just going to say, we cannot by any means overcome anything, combat anything, shut down anything that we don't know. Like literally, this thing can be standing in front of us, and we need to shut it down. But because we do not know, then it stands right there. So I believe the first step is to try to recognize these different types of manipulative tactics and power plays, and then to really try to educate yourself, know what they look like and how they show up. As I said before, manipulators wear masks, so we have to be on our alert, with kind of a heightened sense of discernment to look out for these commonly used ones. We have to be beware of the techniques, and we also have to take steps to protect ourselves, because Dr. Howell, manipulation comes, there is a root. It could come from family issues, it could come from temperament types, it could come from just ego building. So it shows up from different roots, and so if you're just looking at it in one way, you won't even realize that it's there. And so I do believe that people, persons, every one of us have to set clear boundaries and communicate our needs at all times. Because when we have boundaries, set boundaries, values, and not just values, core values that we live by, when we have those, we can really deter and put a stop to manipulative behavior. We can also support ourselves, surround ourselves with supportive people, people who will help us, good friends, family, who can provide, another perspective, or guidance and support to us. I use this scripture that says, one shall chase 1,000 and two shall put 10,000 to flight. Sometimes you alone don't see what is happening, but if someone else give you another perspective or guide you, then you're able to see it in a better way. And finally, I'm going to say that don't, discount things like counseling, coaching, a good relationship consultant like yourself, if it's in a relationship, a mentor, a guide. These people are beneficial, and they will help you to develop, some kind of healthy means, and not just healthy means, coping, because some people can get help and move from it. Some people will have to just cope with it until they're able to get out of it. And the cope with part is like persons who are in a job where they are in a good job, they're earning, and they just don't want to move and leave their job. Those persons need coping mechanisms. Somebody who can just up and leave, they need to just know, and once they see it, they know what to do next. So ultimately it boils down to be proactive and be vigilant in identifying manipulation. And I do believe that God will empower us to maintain control of our own lives and our own relationships. And in the end, we will overcome, but we have to be wise. We have to be vigilant. What's your closing words for that, Dr. Howell?
Man, you covered just about everything I was going to cover. So let me just say this really fast. I'll be very brief. There are things that we know, and we know that we know them. And there are things that we don't know, but we know that we don't know them. But where we run into problem is where there are things that we don't know that we don't know. And so the best way to deal with things that we don't know is to, number one, like you said, surround yourself with high quality people who have your back, people who can give you a fresh perspective. That's number one. Number two, continual self-development and growth. Because the more you grow, the more you expose yourself to different perspectives, different ways of thinking, different ways of problem solving. And then the third thing I want to say is this: if you identify what your values, goals, visions, dreams are, then anytime someone asks you to do something that goes against those main things that make you who you are, it will trigger your spider senses. It will make you feel uncomfortable. It will make you say, hey, I don't know what it is that they said, but something just doesn't feel right about what they're asking me to do. And so continual growth, surround yourself with people, and making sure that you have all of your goals, dreams, values, and boundaries well defined and outlined, so that when someone tries to get you to do something that is not within your realm of comfort, you can run to the hills. That's it. Those are 3 little techniques.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. There is actually nothing else to add to this discussion today. I believe that we have wrapped up so much in this one session. We have allowed so many persons to understand what manipulation is, and the tactics and the forces, and to identify when they come. We want to thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Dr. Howell, as usual, you're such a great co-host, and I love how you always, and I think it's so balancing, because you're always bringing the examples to match the theoretical part of it that I would normally bring out, but you bring the practical examples, and it just balances so much together. And I want to thank you so much for always being this example to the topics that we teach here we teach here each Friday. Yes, we're finally complete our lunch and learn, and we want to thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you a happy Friday, rest of it, and your weekend as well. And we will see you back here. No technical difficulties next week with the camera. We'll see you back here next week, same time, 12 noon, for another Lunch and Learn, a sizzling topic, as Dr. Marcia would say. Be good and be safe, everybody. God bless you.